It has been 1 year since Hurricane Helene ripped through East Tennessee and western North Carolina. It's a storm that left lasting scars on the people and the places hit hardest. In the weeks and the months that followed, communities rallied to rebuild. But the road to recovery, it has been long, it has been complicated, and it's been deeply personal. On this episode of Behind the Headline, we are looking back at Helene's impact through the eyes of the journalists who were there. WBIR reporter Libby Cunningham takes us to Erwin, Tennessee, where the storm reshaped an already close-knit mountain town. And reporter Sam Perez and William Winnett, they share what they witnessed in Asheville and across western North Carolina, from devastating flooding to the stories of resilience that emerged in the aftermath. But we begin in Upper East Tennessee, where more than a dozen people died from the catastrophic flooding. Our cameras captured the devastation in the small town of Erwin in Unicoi County. Fast rising water consumed homes, a hospital, and businesses along the Nolichucky River. Impact Plastics suffered significant damage and loss of life. Take a look.
The last text message Johnny Peterson ever sent was to his father. It's heartbreaking. His dad asked him if he's okay. His response, not for long. Peterson is one of 5 people who died when floodwaters rushed the building and parking lot at Impact Plastics in Erwin on September 27th. His family is now suing the company for $25 million, saying his death was due to their negligence. Attorney Zach Lawson says based on his firm's investigation, no one should have died that day.
What's become increasingly clear is that the tragedy there was entirely preventable.
A 28-page complaint filed in Unicoi County alleges Impact Plastics was open for business on September 27th, even though government offices, schools, and nearby businesses weren't, because the company had a large order to get out to its customers. The complaint also outlines the last hours of Johnny Peterson's life, documenting text messages, videos, and photos he sent to his father and daughter. Just before 11 that morning, his daughter, Alexa Peterson, who's the plaintiff in this case, asked, "Are they shutting it down for the day?" Johnny replied, "They better." About half an hour later, his dad texted him, "You okay? Get your car out?" Peterson said, "I moved it. We can't get out." About half an hour later, Johnny sent another text to his daughter saying, quote, "He can't get out and the water rose so fast." At around 1 p.m., his daughter asked, "Where y'all at?" And Johnny replied, "In bed, 18-wheeler." About 15 minutes later, he sent a text saying, "I love you all." 10 minutes later is when his dad asked if he was okay. And Johnny says he didn't have much time left.
Johnny spent the last hour or 2 of his life trying to save other people's lives.
Impact Plastics owner Gerald O'Connor released a video statement earlier this month. His attorney says he's currently focusing on rebuilding the company, mourning people who died, and investigating what happened.
Employees were told to leave the plant at least 45 minutes before the gigantic force of the flood hit the industrial park. There was time to escape.
Lawson says employees were only told they could go move their cars.
At no point did the upper management, the officers that were there at Impact Plastics, actually tell employees to leave or that they could leave, despite multiple employees asking if they could leave.
Libby Cunningham joining us now. And Libby, I know this has to be one of those stories in your career that is impactful on so many different levels. So let's roll back the clock. Let's go back to your first time in Upper East Tennessee after Helene. And what did you see? What did you experience?
So I had first heard from a lot of friends who lived out of town about people being rescued from the rooftop of a hospital in Upper East Tennessee. A lot of people asking if that was in Knoxville, if that was near Knoxville. And I said, no, that was more up toward the Tri-Cities area. So that Monday we came into work and we were trying to get to areas that had been affected by the hurricane. And we had seen that there had been some businesses in Erwin that were handing out lunches, meals, those types of things to people affected by the hurricane. And I offered to go up there with Lauren Davis. As we were going up there, John North, one of our journalists here, sent me the phone number for a woman named Maria True, who owned Jet Broadcasting, which was Erwin and Unicoi County's local radio station. So they had a music station, they had an AM station where they played all of the high school football games. And I got a hold of her. She said, "Come on up, let's meet." As we were going up to Erwin, everything seemed like, okay, maybe the flooding hadn't hit there yet until you got right into Erwin. We first stopped to get some gas because it's about 2 hours from here. There were people from North Carolina who said, we have no gas where we are. This is the closest gas pump that has gasoline. People were filling up the jugs of gas, not just their cars. They had jugs as well. People from all over, they said, we came over the mountain. And so as we got further into Irwin and met Maria True, it was, I can't even describe almost what we saw, the destruction that we saw there along the Nolichucky River. It was very, very muddy, and you could tell that they were just in the beginning stages of grappling with what happened. Her radio station was right next door to the hospital that we all saw on the news. And there was a very viral image of a horse named Bianca that was actually up against Jet Broadcasting in the floodwaters. Jet Broadcasting, it was knocked off of its foundation, and I mean, the building's gone, it still isn't there. And what struck me about all of this was there was all this devastation, and we speak to Maria True, the radio station owner, and she just said, you know, I can't even explain how this felt to come down here, because further up in Irwin, it wasn't affected like this.
And so, you know, as a journalist, we have a perspective when we are on the scene. When someone's watching at home, the devastation begins here where the screen starts and ends here where the screen ends. But when you go and you witness for yourself the devastation that is 360, how did you process that?
Well, I think when you're there as a journalist, it's your job to get the information out to the people that are affected. This is what is happening in your community. This is what is happening where you are. We had heard right before we came on the air with Live Shots with you and Brittany Bailey that evening that people had been killed in the flooding.
Yeah.
And so as a journalist, I think for the first couple of days there, at least for me, I felt like it was my job to get the information out to people about what was happening in their community. Some people didn't have power, some people didn't have water. When you get back, though, I remember my boyfriend and I went out to dinner that Friday night, and I said, God, I am so grateful and thankful to have a hot meal right now, because I know a lot of people don't. And especially when it's a story that is getting so much play on the national level as well. It can definitely be hard until you're out of what's happening to really think, man, that was really devastating. This is very heartbreaking. People are losing everything, and they're still talking to us because they feel like we can help them get their story out. We can help them get help.
And to that point, let's bring it back to Impact Plastics. Sure. You connected with people who were at that business as the water started to rise. How did this covering that story come to pass?
So we had spoken to Maria True about what had happened at her radio station, and several people that we had seen while we were in Irwin had said, like, some people died at a business here, and it's this one over here. We didn't know the name of it or anything. I would say maybe 45 minutes, an hour. I don't know the exact time before I got on the air. One of our producers sent me a statement from Impact Plastics about what happened. And as journalists, it is our job to report what people say and filter it in a way that people understand, making sure we're attributing it to them. After we basically read the statement on the air, we got an email immediately from a woman who said that her cousin was there when the floodwaters were rising, and that he endured this flooding holding on to this big yellow tubing in the parking lot, and that some of the people that he was with didn't make it. They had been in the parking lot when the floodwaters washed in, and some of his coworkers and friends and people that he loved didn't make it. She immediately contacted Channel 10 after she saw that live shot. I think the live shot was at 5. I think she emailed us at like 5:06 and said, this is what my cousin is saying happened here is different than what this press release says happened.
And thus began many
and just began
stories.
The stories about Impact Plastics.
That's right. People wanted to talk about
they
this.
Did.
So walk us through that. You talked to many people.
I did.
Who shared their stories, and talk about a lot to process. When you're hearing these stories of survival, that's powerful. And then to have to relay that to viewers can be challenging.
It can be challenging because you want to make sure that people have their voice and their experience of what happened out there. And, you know, people who were willing to talk with us and share their stories with us. WBIR had the first voice of a person who spoke about what happened to them in Impact Plastics. It became a national story, and that person was on the air with us first. And I remember when I was waiting at a park in Irwin to meet with him, a lot of the people who worked at Impact Plastics, and there were several businesses along the riverfront, they had to go sign up for like FEMA or some type of an assistance. I don't want to say it's FEMA because I don't remember what it was. And they had to wait in line, and he was waiting in line for that before he came to talk to us. And when he started talking to us, I could tell that he had not processed himself what he had been through. But it was important for him to get his story out. And there were several people when we started talking to him at this park in Irwin that he had known, that he had been in contact with, that we had gotten. They had my information. I said, please contact these people if they want to speak with us. We talked to a couple of other workers, and we also spoke with people who worked at the business next door who were basically saving people who were in the flooded parking lot.
Yeah. And the images that we have since seen as a result, they're incredibly disturbing and powerful. Where do things stand now? Bring us up to date.
So I think it is important to note, although there were workers who said we were not able to leave on time, they basically left us there. They were negligent. Lawsuits were filed. Law enforcement, district attorneys, I think TBI, they said that they found no fault on the part of Impact Plastics. They said that they had given their employees enough time to leave. They had found this throughout their investigations and cleared them legally of any wrongdoing. So bottom line, there are no criminal charges that are going to be filed against anyone with Impact Plastics because law enforcement has found that they were not liable for the deaths, that they gave people, according to the law enforcement, they gave people the directions and the time and wherewithal and everything to leave to not be swept up in the floodwaters. You
have been up to Unicoi County, Irwin, many times over the course of a year as we are marking 1 year since Helene. Explain, if you will, what you've seen amongst the people from as far as emotionally, as far as recovery goes. How has it looked from a year ago to where we are now?
I was just up there last week with William Winnett, who I know went to Asheville as well, and it is just shocking how much can change in a year. It is a lot of people in Irwin. It seems like everyone in Unicoi County was really, really helping everybody out. When you think of where all of the destruction was, it wasn't really in a residential area. It was more there were warehouses, there was the radio station, there's a hotel there, a gas station. Everything has grown back. So I was just with Maria True, who owns the radio station, last week, and there were flowers growing in what was the rubble. I was there around Christmas time. I mean, it looked like it was Christmas time. It was cold, it was snowy. They were clearing out debris still then. There is not really a whole lot of debris anymore, but the buildings that were alongside the riverside, I think Impact Plastics, other warehouses there, they're cleaned up, but they're certainly not rebuilt. Another really striking image when we were up there and we were covering what was happening is we kept seeing people on this overpass over I-26 right there. And I remember saying to Lauren Davis, like, okay, like what's going on there? That is where the highway broke apart basically and fell into the river. That is completely open now. The road is redone. We drove on that road. And so that was kind of crazy to see too. It's just that a year later, it's a lot of regrowth, rebirth. It's kind of peaceful.
Yeah. What about the people when you talk to them?
The people when you talk to them. I mean, I think that when I spoke with Maria True, the radio station owner, she said, listen, like, I don't want to be considered a victim. We survived this. We're moving on with this. But a lot of people say, hey, like, we were really, really hurt by this. This was not a good part of our history.
Mm-hmm. What about response? There was such incredible response from the community and the volunteers. What did they express to you as far as response from that angle, but also from the state and federal level. Did they ever express their appreciation, their frustration, anything along that line?
I cannot speak to that in Irwin. I spoke to people a little bit further up in Damascus, Virginia, which is not too far away from there, along like the Virginia Creeper Trail.
Because that damage went
all around.
up.
A lot of people felt at that point in time that the federal resources to help them were not enough for them. I talked to a family whose entire home had washed away in the flooding, and they said that they only got a couple $1,000s from a paid off home and all the things that they had in there. People did not feel like, up there at least, the authorities were helping them in the way that they thought the authorities could help them. After I had done that story, FEMA had contacted me and said, please talk to us, we want to talk to you. And some people, they said, had been possibly not filling out the paperwork correctly. But I mean, I met people who were living in tents and under tarps who said, I got $4,000. I bought a car instead because maybe I've wheels now, I can get around.
But that is a great point to make, that you became this instrument, that's not the wrong word here, but this voice that's able to share this information to people who can maybe then get the help they need. So with FEMA coming to you, you can then provide that information that they can take and hopefully start that process of recovery. That's an important role.
I think that's the role of journalists, is that we are here to help people and to share their stories and what they have been through. That's why we do what we do. It's not, when you are up there covering this, one thing I noticed, especially the later days in Irwin and even being up in Damascus, it was hot, it was muggy. And when there's a lot of mud like that, there are bees everywhere. I mean, bees
the elements
everywhere. You're out in the elements and you think, I feel very uncomfortable, but at least I get to go home.
Yeah.
At least I am just here to share these stories. This is not my reality. And so it is difficult as a journalist to be up there, but like the perspective and the insight is so important, because you realize that like there are parts of the world that look like this right now. There are people that are going through this right now. And I really believe as a journalist, if we are going to talk about the worst day of your life, the worst period of your life on television, in the newspaper, on the radio, you should be able to comment on it too.
Wonderful perspective. Libby, thank you for sharing your memories, your insight. Much more Helene coverage as we are marking 1 year. I don't like to say anniversary, but it is 1 year since the devastation. So Libby, thank you very much.
Thank you, Robin.
Well, as we were talking about this devastation, it went all the way from the coast to the mountains. And Western North Carolina was especially hard hit in the days after our cameras traveled across the mountain to document the damage and destruction and the loss of life there. Take a look.
We went deeper into Fairview, still on our journey to Chimney Rock, and had to pull over. The roads washed away, literally crumbling. We could not go any further and were advised not to by local aid workers.
All right, good.
Well, you got the right boots.
We met Mitch Colby, who offered to take me on an ATV ride to see the parts of Fairview that are unreachable. Mitch is an artist who lives on this 100-acre sheep farm.
The storm seems to have come right up through the Continental Divide.
This is a little tiny stream.
I quickly learned why driving these roads is impossible. Holes, crumbling asphalt, not to mention downed trees and debris everywhere you look.
It changed this landscape forever.
The further we drove, the more damage we encountered.
Well, it's total chaos. I mean, you have mountain slides that have pushed houses into roads, and then giant boulders have been pushed off the mountains into the road, into houses. Houses have been pushed 200 yards away from their foundations, and it'll never be the same.
These are their darkest days.
I had a helicopter over here. They airlifted a body that'd been there for 4 days. Nobody knew about it. A dog found it. And it might be a relative of some of these people right here. We don't know.
It's unfathomable what these people have witnessed, and that was evident at Nesbitt Chapel Church.
Made it to the church that is providing a spot for food and water and help for these people. This is in the Fairview community, and hopefully they're getting exactly what they need.
Comfort food makes all the difference.
What this is people's food defrosted.
What kind? Do you have a special recipe?
Mama gave it to me and I ain't gonna share it.
David Trainer cooks every day at Nesbitt's Chapel Church. He lost everything.
That happened. I couldn't get out of the house. All the doors and windows were cracked or jammed, and it just twisted my house like it was a beer can.
His focus now, acts of service.
These people, David especially, literally saved my life, because I don't know what I would have done, because I didn't even know about this chapel. And they have
Everything you need.
helped me and saved me. And I am humbled by these people.
This church organized an effort to help on this whiteboard. Clothing, food, necessities, all available for the taking. And these people need it.
I've seen things that will haunt me for the rest of my life.
Wally Graber came down from Highlands and couldn't get back. So he's here now.
There's such a need down here, so a couple of us are staying. You know, it's tough.
He doesn't know when he will be able to return home. And that's okay. These people need each other right now.
It's tough to watch people lose their whole family. But it's also beautiful to watch people come together.
Thank God, we got each other. And that'll get us through, We're survivors up here.
That story, of course, coming to you from 10 News anchor Abby Ham and digital storyteller William Winnett. Also joining us, Sam Perez, anchor, reporter here at WBIR. Both of you experienced a lot of time in Western North Carolina following Helene. But let's bring it back to what we just saw, William. So when did you and Abby get over to North Carolina? How soon after the storm were you guys there?
So I was in town in Knoxville on the 27th. I was actually doing a story about a Lego convention and just torrential downpours.
Yeah.
But I got a call from our news director Sunday morning and saying, we're sending a crew to North Carolina. Can you go? I'm like, absolutely. And he sent me and Abby, and we get here the morning of September 30th. And we just pack up. They have a bunch of snacks for us, and we take our gear and all this food, because we don't know if we're going to be able to make it in at all. But we pack up, we head up 81 North, cross over to Greenville, and back down. We were able to make it in. And yeah, we spent 96 hours.
96 hours, and check it out. There is a wonderful documentary, 96 Hours.
Yes, and the story you just watched, when you're doing a story like this, we didn't really know what was happening in Asheville. So our job was to drive around and just see what we can find and turn stories on what we found. And we were trying to get to Lake Lure, Chimney Rock, when we ran into the gentleman on the ATV. And we were pulling up, and there were authorities there that were like, your car will not make it any further at all. You're gonna have to turn around. And then Abby Ham, the journalist she is, she's like, that's not gonna happen. And the gentleman on the ATV just happened to be there, and she just goes up and says, hey, can you take me down to the church? They told us about a church where people were, getting relief. And bless Abby Ham's heart, she got on that ATV, and she was gone for about 2 hours. So me and another gentleman who flew the drone named Kevin, we were worried sick for about 2 hours. But Abby, I just said, film everything you can on your phone. And what she got on her phone was just, I don't know, even to this day, it's kind of hard for me to watch, even though I was there, and I lived through the 4 days we were there. But what she was able to do was, I don't know, really captured the essence of what was happening at the time.
Desperation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of desperation there.
Absolutely.
Sam, you spent time in Asheville, but beyond Asheville, and just to make the point, the devastation was far and wide.
Oh, it really was. And going and seeing the desperation in that area was really striking. I mean, Asheville was without water, without power, and that was crazy for a city of that size to see that, but then really venturing into these smaller towns like Swannanoa and seeing the communities just devastated was tough.
Yeah, give us a picture of what you saw when you went into Swannanoa.
I mean, walking in, kind of like William said, I mean, we didn't even know what we were going to be able to access, what we were going to be able to do when we were there. And driving with visual storyteller Jillian Taylor through this neighborhood, we literally just turned down the first street that we could find, and seeing houses flattened, seeing how high the waters had risen and the mud just covering everything, I mean, was really jarring. It was, it was eerily quiet. I remember walking down one of the side streets and there was no one there, and just hearing the sound of a fire alarm going off. And that was the only sound. And I mean, it was crazy.
Let's talk about the challenges that come with covering a story where you're tasked to stay there. You're not doing the story and coming back. You were there 96 hours. You guys were there for days as well. When there's no power, when there's no restaurants open, you have to navigate, in addition to doing your job, you're just trying to navigate life. Talk about the challenges you all experienced.
Yeah, so when we got to Asheville, first thing we did, we hop out of the car and we have to be live for the newscast. And this was around 5 p.m. And at that point, I wasn't sure if we had a place to stay yet. But our news director found a place for us to stay. It was about 30, 45 minutes away from downtown at a bed and breakfast. And they didn't have power, but they had running water. So,
that's a win.
So that was a plus. But you have all this equipment. You have to charge batteries. You have to do everything. And I remember the first nights after we were done with our shoots and being live, it was right beside a firehouse. So we walked to the firehouse and we're like, can we charge our batteries overnight? And they were very, very gracious to do that. But like you said, no warm meals. We lived off protein shakes and protein bars for about 3 days. And then 3 days in, we found a Waffle House that was open. And Abby's husband brought an electrical generator. So as we were driving around shooting all this stuff, we would hook up our batteries and things like that in the car and charge them as we were traveling around Asheville.
It was really crazy. I think there's just so much that you have that you don't think about being grateful for until you're left without it. Yeah. And speaking of charging batteries, I remember we were doing a lot of content for the morning shows, and so it's early mornings and everything's dark, so you're not used to waking up early, and you need a phone alarm. But there was no power, so charging phones in order to set your alarm was a struggle. And then also when we got there, it was something that I hadn't thought about. I think some of the members of our team had, but we needed gas, and throughout the entire area, none of the gas stations were working because you needed a credit card. And so that was just, there were so many little struggles like that we just never expected, because I think we've not been faced with something like that.
Yeah, it reminds me, I guess, what's comparable, my experience is after Katrina. Just days after Katrina, we went down to the Gulf Coast and did our best to provide coverage, but the time we were down there, I slept in the news car because there's no place for you to go. Everything's closed or destroyed, and it does give you such a perspective as a human being. And we were able to leave, after a few days, we leave, but then you realize there are people who are going to be enduring this for the unforeseeable future, and it does give you a perspective.
Right.
Absolutely.
For sure. What was the sense of the people, though, in the early days? Was there just a sense of desperation? Was there a sense of, we're going to work through this? Was there hope? Probably that and then some.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for sure that everyone was just kind of in shock, saddled with the future and just the devastation. I think there was, I don't want to say a sense of hopelessness, because I actually felt hope throughout the communities, but just, I think, shock of what had happened. I was really blown away by instantly how quickly people jumped into action to help their neighbors. I was really struck by that. We were there immediately following the storm, and already it felt like there were so many positive stories of just people helping people. And so that was really impressive to me.
Did you experience when it's a challenge when we're going to these places and covering such destruction and devastation and loss of life, but yet we're tasked to tell stories? We have to ask people, will you talk to us? Will you share your story?
Yes.
Were most people willing to share their story with you?
Absolutely. I don't think a single person turned us down. And we were out there for 4 days, and we dozens of interviews, and everyone was very I don't know, they just wanted to tell their story and get it out there. And usually it's not the case. You know, you're walking up on someone that you don't know, they don't know you, and they are going through, you know, maybe the worst day of their life. But for the people of Asheville, they were, even after all that happened, they were very welcoming to us, and that was very powerful to me.
It's hard to believe that we are marking a year since Helene, but what has been just as remarkable in that year, the recovery, the relief efforts. I was recently in Asheville, and I was quite honestly just surprised to see how some areas have definitely made a comeback, others still. But let's take a look at how parts of Western North Carolina are making that comeback.
The shop has been here since 1986.
The chocolate fetish, a staple in downtown Asheville. Operations manager Eric Saborski says the last 7 months have been difficult.
We've been trying to get back to as normal as we can.
But after Hurricane Helene hit Western North Carolina,
The foot traffic is definitely slower than it usually is this time of year.
he says their fall season was completely shot, followed by a slow holiday season, an experience shared by other downtown businesses.
This is Spiritex. It's a sustainable fashion company. It's all organic cotton, and it's all handmade here in Asheville.
Maddie Grant works as a sales associate at the store, which survived Helene.
I don't know how our warehouse held up, but it did.
And now, Grant says they need help from shoppers.
Asheville relies heavily on tourism. That's what we're gonna need to help rebuild.
A message Saborski says might have gotten lost among the devastation in communities right outside the downtown Asheville area.
We appreciate the nationwide coverage of this to remind people of what's going on in this area, but I think a lot of people from out of town, they don't know those surrounding areas, so everything's been referenced as the Asheville area, Asheville. While Asheville is still, has some ways to come on recovering, a lot of Asheville is open, and we need that coming in.
While visitors from other areas might be few and far between.
The local community, the way that they bound together, got together, were looking out for one another, it really was some of the most inspiring things I've ever seen in the middle of complete chaos and destruction.
Destruction that the community is coming back from.
Downtown Asheville is open for business. Most of the businesses are open. We would love to see you. We could really use the support.
Sam just shared with me that was in May, just a few months ago, in downtown Asheville. And what was it like for you to go back then and see what you saw?
It was, really impressive just to see the progress that's been made in, a few months. And I think going and speaking with people in the area, something that really struck me that I was so glad I heard this perspective is I went and I talked to local business owners, and as William mentioned, people from the immediate aftermath, they were so willing to share with us their stories, and they wanted everyone across the country to know about what had happened. But I think now there's this message of yes, we went through this hard thing. It's not over. There are still a lot of areas that are devastated. There's still areas that need a lot of help, but especially in the downtown Asheville community, there's been a lot of recovery efforts. They were without water for 53 days, but once they got water back, they hit the ground running. They're ready. They want people to come to the area. And so that was just really, I think, good to hear and good to realize as they were like, hey, we told you to hold off for a second, but now we're ready and we need tourism to come back.
You and Abby went back.
We did.
And let's talk about, you spoke to many people, but is there a story that resonated that much more with you of this recovery?
Honestly, it was a stark contrast from 6 months prior. We went back 6 months later, and we followed up with a lot of people. The gentleman on the ATV, who's an artist, we followed up with him. We followed up with the gentleman whose entire bridge has washed away to get to his house, so he had to rappel up the side of essentially this really long mountainous hill to even get home. We followed up with him. His road had been rebuilt. We were able to make it into Chimney Rock. We made it to Bat Cave, where they were rebuilding a post office. There were groups from all over the country in Chimney Rock helping rebuild that area. And just the recovery efforts after 6 months, it was night and day. which you love to see. And again, it was very powerful to be there.
This question to both of you, what lessons as a journalist did you learn from this experience, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I think just the value of storytelling. I mean, like William said, I was really impressed and pretty humbled by how many people were willing to share their stories with us. Like he said, I mean, you're meeting with people on some of the worst days of their life, and so a lot of times there's hesitancy, and I completely understand that. I completely understand why someone might choose to not do an interview or not share their story, and that's totally fine. But I was just blown away by everyone who wanted to share their story, and I think it's because they knew the impact of that. And I do think also with this recovery, I mean, I think there's been such a response from all across the country of people wanting to help. I recently went back to film a few stories in Asheville to mark the year recovery, and hearing so many people be like, oh my gosh, we started this GoFundMe and we got donations from all across the country. I mean, stories of that, I think that a lot of that happened because people were so willing to share their stories, and they wanted the word to get out there, and now they want to continue sharing their stories in the aftermath. And so I just think really seeing the power of that was really impactful.
Yeah, to me it showed the impact that journalism can have. Sometimes you're in the news and you've got to meet these tight deadlines, and it seems, I don't know, you're just in and out really quick. This wasn't the case for Asheville. We were there, and
have come back.
Yes, absolutely. And it kind of, I don't know, I don't think I was a journalist while I was there. I was just among the people. And it really struck home for me. My partner and I, we vacationed in Asheville for 4 years prior to Helene coming in. And there's our favorite restaurant. It's called 12 Bones in the River Arts District. And you can write on the walls in the place. And I wrote, William loves Tate on the walls. But when we got to the River Arts District, 12 Bones was completely gone. And that's sort of what brought me into the reality of the situation, to where I'm no longer a journalist. Like, I'm among the people. Let me tell the people's story. And I feel like we were able to do our job at a higher level because we were among the people. It wasn't that transitory in and out, get a quick soundbite, and then leave. We were there, and I feel like that made all the difference.
And I don't need to ask this last question because it's a question I ask reporters at the end of the podcast. How does this story exemplify the power of local journalism? But I think you both beautifully stated that. So thank you, Sam. Thank you, William, for sharing with us your experiences. And thank you for watching this episode of Behind the Headline. We hope you'll join us for the next one. Thanks. Have a good day.